trade professionals. We are back with another weekly news roundup, and I am here with Lalo and Andy. Ooh, so excited. We have some fun articles to talk about. They already shared with me which one they're most excited to talk about. Maybe you can guess which one that is. We'll see. I couldn't have guessed it, but it's not my favorite one, so I can tell you that. But I have a favorite one, and it's the first one. So I'm going to tell you that one. It's not, theirs is a different one, so maybe you'll figure it out. But we're going straight into it. All right, let me catch my breath. The first one is e-commerce platforms should prep for EU VAT and customs changes. Fun fact, I was never really sure what VAT means until I came to Europe, because it's a term here, and now I have to work with it. So you do learn something when you're not in America, when you have to move. But so I do have a few questions about it. First of all, what do you guys think of these changes, this EU VAT that's going to come onto e-commerce, which I'm guessing because e-commerce is getting much bigger and the EU wants to take advantage of it and make money. So really the questions are, how can these businesses prepare for it, even though it's so far in advance? And also, do you think this will be happening for the US? Meaning, I know this is only if you import to the EU right now, but what if you import into the US? Do they have something like this already, or will they propose this as well?
Well, I can tell you the VAT, as people are talking, is value added tax. So it's based on as it would be an ad valorem, meaning it's based on the value of the shipment. This is really, in a sense, the government's sales tax on imported items. Okay. The issue with e-commerce, what the big change is that there are people that have been selling product electronically, if you will, on websites, whatever. People go in, Annik, and you order a shirt or some shoes or earbuds or a frying pan or whatever you're going to order. And you're not really looking to see necessarily where those goods are being sourced from. Most of the time when you're doing e-commerce, it's more than likely going to be not a domestic source. So if you're there in Germany, it's not going to be coming from Germany. It's going to be coming from another country, somebody selling their goods in Germany. So as it goes in, they're supposed to be the VAT on an imported item is supposed to be calculated, and then that VAT is supposed to be provided to the government. What's happening now is e-commerce companies that are selling. If I'm going to open up a web page to sell an e-commerce store, what this is saying is any of my customers that are in Europe, I will be held responsible to ensure that the goods have the appropriate VAT assessed, the value added tax assessed, and that I will be held accountable to tender that VAT to the government. That's what the change in the platform is. Okay, it was supposed to have been there all along, and the reason they're making this change is where the individual was held responsible. Now it'll be the e-commerce company and their platform will be held accountable to make sure that the tax revenue that's owed to the government will be paid. So, in a sense, in my opinion, it's appropriate. They're missing out on collecting funds now, and so this change will be giving the government somebody to hold accountable. Now, it still may be a foreign source to them. So let's say in Germany or Italy or wherever else, the person selling the goods may be like, let's say in the US or Canada or somewhere else. But being able to sell into another country is a privilege, not a right. And as such, that company, if they're not tendering and calculating and tendering the appropriate duties and taxes to the government, will be probably suspended or blocked from being able to sell in that country. So, it's to the government's benefit and it's to the seller to keep that up. That's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, and then I don't really have much to add other than the fact that this is not talking about the EU adding or increasing or modifying anything on the VAT. All they're saying is we need to make sure that you collect VAT and remit it to the government. That's pretty all that it is. It's gonna doesn't affect the consumer. Okay, technically it should not affect the consumer. It should not affect the distributors or the importers, etc. It only affects the software companies that are selling through their platform, and they need to make sure that that platform does collect tax. And it's very similar to what recently happened here in the U.S. Collecting sales tax. You're in Texas and then you're selling in Illinois, for example. You used to not collect tax, but now you have to collect tax through your software product. And so it's, again, very similar in that sense. You just need to make sure that the software is modernized and not use the excuse of saying, "Uh-oh, well, my software doesn't do it. I'm not." You know what I mean? So basically, they're putting the responsibility on the software company to make sure that they do calculate and collect those taxes. Pretty much that's all they're saying. So again, it just pretty much just to clarify, they're not increasing any duties or taxes or anything. All they're doing is saying pay your duties and taxes and all that. So through the software.
Okay. I get it. I do have a question. I don't know. See, that's what I'm looking at right now because I thought that it did say that if I think it's something with 150 euros for the something with 150 euros, and it goes onto the customer, but I don't know where it
Well,
exactly
maybe it
said that.
does. It's just maybe it does, but what they're trying to say is that if it affects a customer, it doesn't mean that they're imposing suddenly a tax on them. What it's saying is that maybe the software that vendor was using never collected it, but it doesn't mean you never were obligated to pay it. You know what I mean? You just got away with it up until now, I guess. Let's just say that. Does that make sense? Um, I know when I used to buy stuff on not on well, even on Amazon, way back in the day, it never charged me tax if it was coming from if it was coming into Texas and that company had absolutely no offices in Texas and they were in, I don't know, pick a state, it doesn't matter, Florida, and they were shipping it to me. Um, they didn't collect tax, but now they do. Now that you know what I'm saying, it didn't mean that I was not obligated to pay that tax. It just means that somewhere in there, the software just didn't collect it. So that's what's happening.
No, I understand. And so in the US, do you think that something like this will change? Did you say that? I don't think you.
Well, at this point, there is not a VAT that the U.S. charges. There are, I mean, you have your duties and taxes as far as imports. Now, if a foreign entity is selling to somebody, as Lalo just said, in Illinois or California or Tennessee or somewhere else, you'll have to check the state laws. But on the international side of things, there may be a scenario where the state appropriate state sales tax would be applicable, if I can say that. I don't know why I can't all of a sudden say it. Uh, it may be applied to the transaction and you'll have to collect it. So that may be on the reverse. Right now, this is though the article itself was talking about e-commerce platforms get ready for the changes for selling into Europe, and with that, it's the VAT. So
Second article, we're going, oh my goodness, this has been a problem. I feel like we're always talking about delays in shipping, and here we go again because there's long delays at Panama Canal after. Okay, this is a word I cannot say. Drought.
Drought.
Drought. Long delays at Panama Canal after drought hits global shipping route. Okay, so Yeah, and actually it's funny because that article mentioned the river where I grew up at, but at the end. So this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the Panama Canal. But it seems so that the delays have been happening there for, I think it's for a few days now, right? Or weeks. And so I want to just question, with these kind of delays, what can importers and exporters expect? Also, any ideas on how to prepare if this does not get better? Because obviously they're saying that this is a global weather issue, you know? Um, so we don't know what's going to happen, and I guess we have to be prepared for the worst. And they're saying that the Panama Canal is one of the canals where ships go through to get a little bit quicker to their destination. I guess that's what I read. So I just want to see what people can do and what's happening right now. Like these things that are stuck there right now, how does the process go?
Well, you're just in line. Here's the thing that in looking at it, our Panama Canal is a man-made canal that it cuts through Central America, and without the Panama Canal, if a ship is wanting to go to the eastern seaboard of the U.S., they have to then travel all the way down around the tip of South America, all the way down and go way around. So cutting through the Panama Canal enables a ship, if you will, to cut through, the Gulf of Mexico area and in through, and it really saves a tremendous amount of transit time. It helps save on fuel. However, there are, according to the article, about 140 ships that are delayed in this. And what it means is with the drought, the locks as a ship goes through, it's just taken longer for the locks to empty out or fill up with water, or if you're moving through the locks on the canal. So the other side of this is where a lot of people were looking at bypassing the western seaboard ports because, if you recall, the longshoremen were going out on strike. Now that has since been resolved. So we're talking about how to resolve that. If you're coming from Asia and you're going through and you're wanting to bypass the western seaboard ports, then you would use the Panama Canal. Now, in this case, it may be better. You have to balance out the delays on the Panama Canal versus the western seaboard ports, and put your goods on a rail and move it across country or whatever. Or you do the backdoor route where you go the other direction and come back around through Europe or that way, and then come to the eastern seaboard.
How efficient is the railroads lines in the US? I've never really gotten into it. I'm not sure what the primary way is to transport things there. Like, do you know?
Well, it's a very good question. From a cargo perspective, they're
They're
pretty
very good.
efficient, and yeah,
Right.
they're very good. And there's a lot of what you would call piggybacks. It's where you take containers off of a ship and then they load them onto a rail car and they move them across country or wherever. And then from there, they take those containers and they put them on the trailers for trucks
Like a flatbed. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's pretty good, Annik. Just to answer your question, I went here locally in El Paso. There's obviously a big, humongous hub because
There
product
is
comes
one,
in through
yes.
Mexico. Yeah. So it comes in through Mexico. It comes in from Mexico into the U.S. and in southern New Mexico and West Texas, of course, where we're at. That's a big hub. And I went to a presentation. I was really impressed on how well and efficient the system is. And like Andy said, the way it piggybacks. And if you're literally going from one coast to the other, you're going to actually transpose or you're going to have to go through a couple of different rail lines because it jumps from one company to another, and that whole process is actually very efficient.
The last one is their favorite article, and it's because I actually don't know. I think it's their favorite thing to talk about. Mexico expands tariffs on 483 products to protect domestic markets. I have a few questions, but I know you guys are going to talk about a lot of more stuff because you guys are just excited to talk about it. So, what does this article mean in terms of
It's just
tariff?
something to be aware
Well,
of.
yeah, I was gonna say, not necessarily excited. It's just that it's good news because of tariffs. You know that people need to physically prepare for this. So
Yeah, so you guys can actually tell me why you're so excited, maybe first, and then what does this article mean in terms of tariffs protecting vulnerable sectors? So first of all, I'm a little confused on the vulnerable sector part, and I read into it, but I just want to hear it from you guys. And then, do you think this is a positive decision, and how will businesses respond to this, and why is it happening?
Well, I don't know if I would say it's positive or not. It's an issue. There's a definitive change right now in Mexico with the current administration in Mexico. And instead of looking at, moving to reduce tariffs and having a more open economy, if you will, and an open importation scenario of goods, what Mexico is doing is putting forth the tariffs. Well, what is the issue with the tariffs? There's two objectives with a tariff. Either one, to add tariffs to a country's goods because they are participating in unfair trade practices, and so you're trying to modify behavior of that country to say, look, we need to trade in a more fair environment. Or two, it's a protectionism type scenario. In this case, it's Mexico is looking to protect their own domestic industries. So let's just say that some of these things were, and it talked about, let's say, garments or whatever. So somebody in the textile field, and there were several items that were listed. The point being is in this is that to protect jobs in Mexico, they are adding tariffs to, let's say that I want to make a t-shirt and from China and I'm going to ship it down to Mexico and sell in Mexico. Well, Mexico makes t-shirts. So you have a Chinese t-shirt now that's going in there and they're adding tariffs to that garment. And what that does is makes that garment now more expensive for somebody to buy in Mexico. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes total sense. And then I feel like it is positive for the country, not for other countries maybe, but
well,
for their own countries and
Yes and
goods,
no.
it's positive.
Remember, we've talked about that before. It is positive for the country because the worker in Mexico who's making T-shirts, he has job
Yeah, they're
security.
valued more.
But okay, but what happens when, and we've talked about this. Andy had said this even before. Okay, so his job is protected, his or her job is protected, but now everybody else, including that worker, is paying more for other items because the tariffs went up. So where's the offset? You know what I mean? And again, I'm not for losing jobs or anything for somebody, at all. I mean, all I'm saying is there's another side of the coin there.
It's like, Lalo, you're making a great point here, and it's great for the workers in the short term. But here's the other thing: Mexico is looking at adding tariffs. Now, they have not specified the specific countries yet. However, they did say in this article that the Mexican government is looking at adding tariffs to goods from countries who do not have a trade agreement with Mexico in place. So, like for example, the USMCA, the US Mexico Canadian Agreement, NAFTA 2.0, that's a trade agreement. And then they have trade agreements with other countries. Okay, fine. But China and Malaysia, I believe, and countries like that, do not have a trade agreement with Mexico. As such, logic's going to tell you they're going to be adding tariffs to those types of goods. So that's where that comes into play.
You know what? I do have to say that who's going to talk about this probably more than you guys are is Trudy, because we have actually, this is crazy to say, but we have just 2 more export to Mexico trainings this year, which is September 7th and November 2nd. And I know since this has kind of taken over the news, I know Trudy will talk about it and go more in depth, and you can ask questions, specific ones, even email her. So if you guys have any more questions, that's probably the best route to go. Just wanted to mention that.
Well, let's put her contact information in the show notes, and that way people can reach out to her.
Other than that, I think all questions have been answered. These were great little articles. Can you believe we didn't have China in here this week? Crazy. but I do have a fun, wow, good job to them. I do have a fun fact, which I kind of went into during, did I lose it? Oh, here it is. I wanted to use something that's article specific, and then we talked about it. So I was like, okay, do you know how many railroads there are in the U.S.? Could you get? I know you won't know, but take a guess.
Railroad companies?
No, railroads that operate common carrier freight in the United States.
Well, I know there's some major ones, but then you also have regional ones. I don't have a clue.
I mean, my guess was going to
700.
be 3. Oh my God. Yeah. You see, I was going to say 3, 700.
3. So there's about 700 railroads operate common carrier freight service in the United States. There are about 160,000 miles of railroad track in the United States, nearly all standard.
There's very few, well, it's mostly cargo related. You know, there's some passenger that in and out of Chicago and on the eastern seaboard, but you don't really see a whole lot of passenger across the country anymore on the rail. So
that's like the primary one used in Europe. So that's it's funny, but yeah. So that's a fun fact. Oh, did you guys know? So what's crazy is that you can go from Germany to London on the railroad, but it goes under the water.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
the tunnel, yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah,
I
what do they call
didn't
it?
do that, but
Don't they call it the channel? The channel or something, isn't it? Or is that from
yeah,
France to? No, that's from France to England. Is a channel.
Oh, I have no idea. It takes like
The
6
tunnel
hours.
under
I
the
mean,
channel. Yeah.
yeah. This one takes like 6 hours, but I don't know because you go dark. I mean, you're in the dark going through the water. I don't know if I would like that. So it's kind of scary. But anyways, so that concludes today's show. Thank you again for listening. Thank you, Andy and Lalo, for sharing all your thoughts and giving your knowledge out to the public and to me, of course, mostly to me, probably.
Hey, I have a quick tip. I know you're gonna say share and all that on LinkedIn and all that, but there was a big hack on LinkedIn. So if you did not get hacked like I did, make sure you put 2-factor authentication on your account. So it's a public service announcement.
Yeah, do that because that's not fun if you don't have your account. So if you can't find Lalo on LinkedIn, now you know why. Anyways, and thank you for reacting to all of our stuff on LinkedIn. We've gotten great reactions and, to our 10K celebration. So that was awesome.
That's excellent.
Yeah, we love
That was a
hearing
good
from
picture.
you.
I love that cake.
Yeah, it was so cute. Okay, well, anyways, thank you guys, and we will see you next Monday. Bye.
Let's have a good one.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.